Hello, beautiful heart. It's Lisa Jane here, and this is the Awakening series. Today, I'll be discussing relationships. I'd like to talk about what happens when you start to awaken in your relationships because you actually become a different person, right? So, your relationships are definitely going to change. What happens before we awaken? Just going back a little step and having a look at relationships before and after. What is the difference? Why do they change? And perhaps having a look at what is the potential for our relationships? Like, how can this interaction with another human being really change our world, which is what I believe it can. So let's have a little bit of a reflection at the moment and just tuning into your heart right now, because a lot of information goes into your head and a lot of things that you might hear is very head-based information. Now, while it's important to be able to have some information to process, what we really want to start doing now is we want to start talking to each other's hearts. Because when you have a feeling about what I talk about, that means that your heart has an awareness around it, and it actually makes it more real. You feel the substance in the conversation. It doesn't just become words that get stuck in your head that add to all the information you have and actually aren't that accessible to transform into everyday living wisdom. So saying that, let's just go back a step and have a look at what relationships have been like on this planet with people. And I've sort of got a feeling that most of you might be a little bit like me. We were raised by parents who were children of parents who had been in the war, and that whole generation of men and women that were quite shut down often emotionally. So children that came in, we're pure little souls, and we're longing for connection. We're longing to feel a sense of our parents' presence, like they're here with us right now. This is not about them telling us that they loved us or doing things for us. It's about the feeling that my parent is here and that my parent can see me. Like they're acknowledging me for who I am, not for what I do or for how gifted I am or, you know, for how naughty I am, just for who I am. So we've been raised in these situations where our parents may not have been fully present with us. And we learn that in order for us to get what we need to survive, which is a feeling of connection and safety, we have to forego certain things. We may forego certain natural instincts, for example, because we don't want to get into trouble. We want to keep them happy. And it's really valid that we do that because our survival is at risk. We want to survive. And so if our choice is between having our parents love us and keep us safe and us being true to ourselves, we're most likely going to go with what our parents are requiring, just so that we continue to assure that we're going to be okay in this life. Of course, the alternative is that we don't have a safe household, but in the same way, as little children, what we do is we develop strategies to survive whatever it is that we're going through. And a lot of those strategies, like when you think about it, it's pretty clever. Like as little beings that have no resources, the things that we do, pretty amazing. And what would be the ideal for a society is understanding that as children, we often do outsource our emotional needs to our parents because that's a natural thing. I haven't actually learned how to do it yet for myself, so I outsource it to my parents. And then when I become a teenager, what is ideal is, okay, let's now teach you how to meet your own emotional needs, because when you can do that, you can actually create healthy attachment with another person. You can be present in the relationship. You can be true to yourself, which means that you're not in a relationship as a version of you that actually isn't true. However, we don't do that for teenagers, not because we're bad people, but because that's just not how our culture works, mostly. So then what happens is, as a teenager, I'm moving away from my parents, but I still have emotional needs that need to be met. And so what do? I do the only thing I know to do, which is I look outside. Who can I find that can meet this emotional need? And I remember being like 17 and in my bedroom and just imploring God, please send me someone I can love. Please send me someone I can love. Now, isn't that really interesting? I didn't say send someone to love me. I just, pleaded for someone to love. Now, I had no conscious awareness of what I was asking. And so when a person turned up who was quite absent emotionally, I saw in that person who had a lot of things not to my liking the opportunity to be able to step in. Here's someone I could love, I could fix him, I could rescue him, and that's exactly what I did. And so I set up a relationship based on these very faulty foundations. It was almost like if I come in and rescue him, and if I love him, and if I do all these things, then he will give me security. He will make me feel good enough. And that little unconscious agreement that I had going on my head was nothing that I got him to sign. He was completely unaware of that agreement. There was no contract. But I lived on that premise for 18 years. And it was so interesting because I didn't know any different. I thought that was normal. I thought the feelings that I had, the feelings of disconnection, the feelings of dissatisfaction, the arguments, the conflict, the tension, the total distress at his drinking. I remember lying in bed at night and just going, if only he'd put down the bottle, and I'd had this vision in my head of him and I skipping happily along a path and the bottle was just left to the side. But now I realise that it wasn't the bottle that was the problem. It was the nature of our relationship. The way he was in relationship with himself meant he needed to drink in order to survive or cope with whatever it was he wasn't looking at himself. And I was in this relationship of trying to rescue him from this situation. And so everything was just really not functional. I had to abandon myself often to do the things that I thought I had to do to stay in that relationship. And I never saw once that I was actually walking away from myself. I knew, and how's this? Like, I remember when I left that relationship, I remember reflecting back and thinking, wow, I always felt like there was a line in the sand. And I actually became aware, isn't that interesting that I felt like there was this line in the sand? I would never cross that. Now, to anybody else, I look like a pretty confident, strong-willed person, but I would never cross that line in the sand. And when I left this partner, I thought, what the hell was that? What was that line in the sand? It wasn't like he wasn't physically abusive, so like I never would have been hit. So why was there so much fear over that? And I realized that was just a psychological thing that had been set up in my mind due to the nature of our relationship. It wasn't real. And actually, it was me giving away my power for a very long time. So these codependent relationships that many of us are in unwillingly, and we also see it with our children, when we actually stop to examine them, we have an emotional need that we are outsourcing to these people, and we expect them to meet them. Now, of course they can't, because the need is inside of me. And so when they don't, I have other feelings. I get resentful. I get controlling. I get abusive. I get angry. I get hurt. I get all the things that I get when I don't get what I want so that I can feel okay. When we start to see these relationships and see how we're just so entangled and we're giving our power away all the time so that we can get our emotional needs met, when all along we have the capacity to meet those needs inside of us. The need feels like a void. When I feel like I'm not loved, when I feel like I want connection. It's like a void inside of me, and I want somebody else to put the stuff in to fill that up. But they can't. People can support me for a little bit, but it doesn't really last because it's inside of me. I need to generate that for myself, and in fact, my heart has the capacity to generate that for myself. So, can you imagine? And here's where the awakening comes in. When I start to awaken, I've unlocked my capacity to generate these emotional feelings for myself. I start to feel my own presence. I start to feel the power of my presence. I start to feel this deep sense of peace and love and care. And I start to align with or embody this state of being that is so full. It's so full, full of love, full of joy, full of peace. It's so full that when I turn up to my relationships, I don't need anything from them. There is no hidden agreements. There is no hidden agendas. That means that the person that I'm in relationship with is completely free. And I am completely free. From being a person who used to not say things or say things in a way that was so flowery and nice and, careful that the whole meaning got lost. From a person that was always in her head trying to think about how this would land and how can we change this and how, all the things I did that really cramped my own style, to now just feeling so whole that I'm very comfortable sharing what it is I'm feeling, but not in a way that I'm not blaming somebody else. You see, with codependency, with these old relationships, because it's about this exchange of I'll do this for you if you do this for me, it's often very unconscious too, that then we're not really honest. We can't be honest because there's so much at stake. I have to keep being that person, otherwise the relationship might end. And then what would happen? I'd feel completely insecure. I can't say those things because they might get insulted and then they wouldn't like me. And if they didn't like me, I'm going to have a feeling. Everything that we do is based on these unconscious plays that become power plays. And I'm sure that you would have felt that. People that you're in a relationship with that, you can feel that there's this power play between you. This could even be with kids, right? So I remember once having my partner's son come to live with us, and he didn't have many jobs, but his job was to take the garbage out, and he simply just didn't do it. And I remember feeling very resentful at that, and I also remember feeling the power dynamic. Like I felt like it was a real power struggle until I stopped and went, actually, every time I feel resentful, I'm giving him my power. I'm giving my power to this situation. And so if I wasn't to do that, what is the solution? I can't rely on him to change, and this may happen all the time. So what is another solution where I am not putting myself in this position to be hurt? So it became a very powerful tool for me to start to have a look at, if I felt a power dynamic, what is it that I'm doing that's putting myself in a position to be hurt? And how can I take back my power? Because that is the awakening. That is how we move towards a full awakening. And really, what is awakening? Like, I'm not even sure that I like that word so much, but let's keep going with it. But this just means I'm awakening to the power of my true nature. I'm connected to the power of my true nature now. So when I start to see that perhaps a lot of the relationships that I'm in or have been in are on foundations where I really of fear, because I'm fearful of not getting a need met. So when I flip that and I come back into myself and I start to realize that I actually generate all of those feelings inside of me, I start to realize that I can create completely different relationships. So just as an aside too, when I start to realize this, I free myself. Because whilsoever I am in one of the old relationships, there are a lot of things that I won't do or say for fear of what might happen. And so how can I ever feel completely joyful and free in this life? How can I ever come home to my true nature? How can I ever unlock the creative potential I have? Because I have all these cages and conditions around how I need to be. And I remember the most incredible experience, when I left my first relationship, was how I would have sworn to you that I was free. I was so free. I could hop in a car, I could do what I wanted. But when I left that relationship, I thought I was so in a cage. I was in a cage of my own making. I was not free at all. And I could have walked out any time. I just did not realize I was in a cage. So now, as we come into this new state of being, where we have the opportunity to really discover the power that we have inside of ourselves, what does that mean for our relationships? Now, the thought of that might freak somebody out. I could just imagine, once upon a time, it would have freaked me out. Because I would have been thinking, oh my gosh, if I start to look at this, I might have to leave my husband. Because that's true. A lot of people do end up leaving their relationships. But I'm going to tell you right now that you don't need to be concerned about that. There's this amazing presence or spirit of life, this universal spirit that works with us. If we decide that the most important thing for us is to really come home to ourselves and to really reclaim our true power, everything happens at exactly the right time in exactly the most perfect way for us. We don't need to be concerned for the future. Our mind will project. But if we just do what's right here, right now, just deal with what's happening right here, right now. If I'm in a power play, what is it in me? And if we just keep doing those little things, the rest of it works itself out. I remember once speaking to a young married man, and he said to me, I just don't think, and in fact he wasn't married, I remember it was just before he got married, and he said, I just don't think that I can do this anymore. I just feel so overwhelmed and so suffocated here, and I just want to be free. I just don't like it. I just can't sit in here. Where he was living was with his girlfriend and her parents, and I just can't do this anymore. And I remember saying to him, well, maybe you don't need to end the relationship. Why don't you just do the next right thing? Why don't you just get yourself some space? Because at the moment, it's very hard to decide what you need to do. So just move out, get yourself some space, and then really think about or feel into what feels right for you. Because maybe ending the relationship is not the way to go. And so once he'd given himself some space, he realized that he did really want that relationship to work. And, there was a really happy ending ever after ending with that one. So just remember, you can't always trust what your mind says. In fact, I sort of feel like I can't trust anything my mind tells me, because often it's not the truth of what I need to be thinking about right now. So coming back to what happens in your relationships as you start to shift like this, there is this most beautiful opportunity for you and your partner or your children to come into this such a co-creative relationship, such an honoring of the individuals that you are. So the dynamics that have been holding you in tension and conflict for all of this time, as you awaken, you start to drop those dynamics because you're seeing your role in it and you no longer play into those dynamics. Now, it is possible that other people get a bit shirty at that because you're not playing into the dynamics. So be it. However, often what happens is you can start to bring in this beautiful dialogue of, wow, I love you so much and I feel so connected to you. I don't want to feel resentful. So how can we address this situation in a way that actually adds to what we've got going on here? How can we add more to our life? How can we add more harmony? And when both people start to really look at the potential for adding to what they have, I mean, where does that stop, right? That's infinite. And so you become closer over time. In comparison to codependent relationships where you actually become more disconnected over time and you feel like you're more in a habit than a really close, loving, joyful, experiential relationship. So here you are now, having started to awaken to these new ways of being in relationship, and you're starting to talk to this person. You're starting to heal the old patterns. You're starting to imagine what it would be like to actually have a life where you're adding more love to it all the time, and you're deepening the connection. And you're feeling capable of doing that because inside of you, you are so in love with yourself. You have so much fullness. You are so connected to this deep presence, this incredible divine power within you, that you feel quite unshakable. It's not like you don't care about the other person leaving you, but it's like, I'm okay and I have all this to give. Let's work it out. And so you're not operating from a base of fear or what might happen or insecurity, which means you're so confident to say what you need to say. You are so able to speak your truth. And that is so freeing, like just for you and everybody around you. I don't know if you have any friends like that, but I have one friend who is just so in this space. He's so totally present. But I know that if I can't make a meeting with him, or if something happens and I don't call him, I know I don't feel at anything around him having an issue with that because he's already full. It doesn't make any difference to him whether I show up or not. He celebrates me when I get there with him and he honors me. But it's nothing personal to him if I don't show up. And that's a really beautiful way to live. I don't take it personally when other people, they're busy or they can't show up or they don't do something for me. That's not about me. I'm fine here. And so living in that state of being, can you imagine what that would feel like? Like just sit for a minute and just feel like, you might have a whole lot of people that you're trying to please, or you might get feelings around your friends, for example, where you feel obliged to do things. All of those little things, they are times when you need to actually abandon yourself or walk away from you in order to keep others happy. So imagine that if that wasn't the case anymore, that you can just be this beautiful, full, loving being without any conditions on anybody else. Imagine being loved by someone that doesn't place any conditions on you. How amazing would that feel? That would actually give you a sense of emotional safety. I feel so emotionally safe here that I can say anything that I need to and be anything I need to. It would also give you a sense of emotional intimacy. Because there's no conditions on me, I can be emotionally intimate. Everything I feel is safe here. I can share it here. So can you imagine, with that sense of emotional intimacy, what physical intimacy can become? And that leads me into the next thing that I wanted to share with you, was this potential for sacred union. So when we come back into our true nature and we live as a whole, fully integrated person with our divine presence, and we meet another person that is able to sit in their wholeness, when these two people come together in this connection that is unconditional, something happens that is beyond our knowing. It is like another energy generates from them, the consciousness that is created by these two beings coming together, is way beyond the consciousness that can be created by each individual by themselves. There is so much potential for healing for the individuals, for healing for the people around them, for healing for the world around them. There is so much potential for connection. There is just so much potential in those relationships. And when you're in those relationships, the sanctity of the physical connection is bliss. So I guess what I'm saying is, and from my experience, it's like another way to experience a blissful state of being is through these unions. We have this capacity to enjoy and open up doors into realms of experience that we otherwise would never, ever have had any idea existed. So, relationships after an awakening can be absolutely incredible. They can also take a little while to get to that place. Personally, my journey has been, I've had a relationship where I've experienced that full emotional intimacy and emotional safety and the experiences that come with that. And now there's been a time where I've chosen to be alone and really be married to myself, actually. And the feelings that I have now fill me up so much that it's quite okay for me to be unpartnered at this time in my life. I know that won't always be the case. But for now, it just feels so good to be in that situation. The time after codependent relationships end, and we have this beautiful opportunity then to really go back and investigate the way that we were in relationship so that we don't repeat those patterns. We have an opportunity to shift some relationships out of our life that maybe don't serve us, and sometimes that can be challenging because maybe these relationships are significant relationships to us. On that journey, the words that I can say that might support you is that when you decide and consciously choose to make that presence in you the non-negotiable thing in your life, everyone benefits. The people around you benefit, the world benefits, and you benefit. There might be short-term conflict. There might just be these little patches of time that you need to work through. But those moments are actually building your living wisdom. They are giving you this tangible feeling of strength. They are transmuting all of those emotions that have been buried into this living creative potential so that there's more of you here in your life. There's more of you here to experience the joy and the love that you are. I'm pretty passionate about talking about what relationships have the potential to be, because I really feel that this is a pathway for us to heal our world and to bring our communities closer together. I hope that you've gotten something from this. I would love to leave you with a thought or an imagining, because imaginings are power. So imagine if you felt so full of love and joy. You were just full. And in that fullness, imagine how you'd turn up to work. Imagine how you'd turn up with your partner. Imagine how you'd turn up with your friends. What would your life look like if you were so full of that love? That emotional energy that you have, that power that you have, that is true power. No longer needing to access power from other people through power plays or codependent dynamics, but actually having this true power. How would that feel? Would you be more playful? Would you be more joyful? Just imagine that, because that is available to you. You simply need to choose that for yourself. If you've enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you subscribe, and I'd be even more grateful if you told your friends about this. And if you've enjoyed listening to my voice, I would love to invite you to click on the link underneath this Awakening series video, where you can join the mailing list for my Monday Morning Magic, where I jump on free of charge for 25 minutes every Monday morning, and you can listen in and actually tune in to your deep divine presence to help you set up your week.